Hey there, and welcome back to By His Grace Marriage Ministry Podcast. My name's Amanda. Shalom to all of you. I pray you all are doing well. I know it's been a really long time, and it feels great to be back. So I'll just share a quick update with you all real quick, and then I will jump into the message that I have for all of you this evening. So yes, it's been quite some time. I did share in my most recent episode, or my last episode, that I was going to be taking some time off. I was going to be taking a break, and it was a much needed break. So seeking Yah and preparing for the next season and chapter of my life. And with that being said, it's still a little bit unclear as far as the future of the podcast ministry and counseling. So as far as I know, as of now, I will not be resuming counseling at this time. And I will be releasing, obviously, this episode this evening, but that's not to say that I will be recording and publishing any more episodes anytime soon. It really just depends at this point. But this evening, I felt really strongly led to share this message this evening with all of you. And it's actually a topic that I have talked about numerous of times throughout my podcast ministry because it's so vital. But as far as, are there going to be any more episodes after this one? Will I be continuing counseling? At this time, no, I will not be continuing counseling. However, you are still welcome to reach out to me via email just to say hello. If you have prayer requests, if you have questions, that's more than fine, and I would love to hear from you all. As far as any more episodes coming up that I know of, apart from this one, I don't know that there will be any more. However, I have noticed from time to time that many of you are still listening to a lot of the episodes that are already published and recorded and published on the podcast. Some of you have reached out to let me know, to thank me for certain episodes that you've listened to, that it's helped you, and that, praise Yah, I give all glory and praise to Him. So I'm really thankful for that. I believe there's 140 something episodes on there. So I'm so glad that all of you have been, or most of you have been, just utilizing the podcast. And I pray that it continues to help you in whatever way that is needed. So praise Yah for that. But as far as any more episodes apart from this one this evening, I'm really not very sure. But thank you all so much for your understanding and your support. Either way has just been incredible. And I'm so thankful to Yah for this opportunity to have taken part of this podcast ministry. And it's been a year. So it's just really amazing. And, I don't know if it'll be another year. I just don't know. But until then, I'm just really thankful for what there is in terms of the podcast ministry and for all of your support. And I just pray that this podcast continues to reach who it needs to reach. So that's the quick update. Now I want to go ahead and jump into this evening's word. Again, this is a topic that I have talked about numerous of times because I feel it's so vital that we are aware of this, especially for those of you who are still single and you're trusting in Yah for your marriage, especially for those of you that maybe, you had experience being in a counterfeit relationship or even a marriage and you've just barely gotten out of it and you've repented and you've turned to Yah and you're like, if marriage is still, part of your plans for my life, I'm waiting on you now. A lot of us went through that. And now this is like our second or third time, trying to make things right. So, the truth, the unfortunate truth, the sad truth is that this happens to many people. And I've explained this before, that the enemy, one of his biggest tactics to stop both men and women from going into, Yah's will for their life and to get them distant from Yah is by baiting and trapping them into counterfeit situations. Now, it doesn't always pertain to just relationships. There could be counterfeit jobs, counterfeit ministries, counterfeit friendships, you name it, right? But I see this happen a lot. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot, where a lot of people are falling into these counterfeit relationships, counterfeit situationships, and even marriages. And it's one of the biggest ways that the enemy seeks to still kill and destroy, and to get us away from Yah's plans for our lives, especially within the area of marriage, if you're called to it. So I've talked a lot about this before. I've done several words on this. I've even done a few words that were geared towards men specifically, because I've always felt that the enemy targets men just a little bit more concerning the area of counterfeit situations. But he also targets women as well. I fell for it at one point, and I've known other women that have gone through the same thing, that have married these counterfeits, and then they're miserable, and they come to realize it, years later or something like that. So it's a big deal, and I really felt led tonight to share this. I actually am going to be reading an article. It was not written by me, but I actually came across this, and when I read it, I thought, this is worded great. I mean, I really wanted to come on and share this. And again, a lot of what I'm going to read, I have said myself in my own words. And I really feel led to make another episode in regards to this topic, because it's happening way too often, and it's ruining a lot of people's lives. It really, truly is. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and start reading this article because it's quite long. So hopefully I have enough time to share this. I will be changing some things around in terms of, I will not be using the pagan terms or names. I will be using the Hebrew names and terms where I can. But again, this was not written by me. However, this is very, very similar to what I have taught and ministered about as well concerning the area of counterfeits. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So the article is titled The Counterfeit Spouse, and that is also what I will be titling this episode as well. So the definition of a counterfeit is to imitate something authentic with the intent to replace the original, or otherwise to deceive individuals into believing that the fake is of equal or greater value than the real thing. Okay, so we know that the devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy. When you encounter the counterfeit, something in you or something in your life will either be stolen, be destroyed, or be killed. Okay, now I'm gonna stop right there. I have said this a lot, especially with men, that their lives literally end up getting destroyed to one degree or another. Okay, it happens to women too, but I've seen it a lot more with men. So our relationships can either be orchestrated by a familiar spirit or by the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. And which spirit connected to people in a relationship can be discerned by the fruits that are eventually produced in that relationship. So for those of you who don't know, familiar spirits are demonic spirits whose function in the kingdom of darkness is to monitor bloodlines and make sure that whatever quote-unquote history or negative patterns which occur in a family continues, right? Keeps reoccurring with each generation. So they can do this either by projecting a demonic dream to show you the counterfeit so that you think they are your spouse, or use a false prophet or a prophet whose heart is not right to give you a false confirmation prophecy that a counterfeit is the one. I did an episode fairly recently about this whole delusion surrounding kingdom marriages. There's a ton of people on YouTube claiming to be prophets and prophetesses in the area of kingdom marriage, and they're prophesying these false prophecies about marriage. Okay, and this is why I've been warning people over and over that please stop listening to these things, because you're going to end up in a counterfeit situation. Okay, if you haven't heard that, I would really highly recommend and encourage you to do so. Okay, or by using mind manipulation and control and orchestrating the counterfeit and you to just quote unquote bump into each other so that a demonically arranged relationship can be formed. Y'all, I experienced this as well, where I literally had somebody show up at my door. And it's a long story, but let's just say all of this is 100% correct and extremely accurate. I've experienced it myself in my life. All right, so Yah-ordained marriages are very potent in enabling us to fulfill our purpose and impact the destinies of others at large. I've talked about this before. This is even at the very beginning of my podcast ministry. Now, knowing this, the devil will always make sure he sends a counterfeit that will intercept and upstage our Yah-ordained spouse. Now listen, for some, like what happened with me, this could happen even years before you even meet your spouse. That's what happened to me. I ended up becoming involved with somebody years before I even actually met my Yah-ordained spouse. Did it, hurt my life and destroy it to a certain degree? Absolutely. And the same thing happened with my husband as well. The exact same thing happened. I'm telling you, this is one of the biggest ways that the enemy tries to destroy these types of things, okay? Now, the counterfeit will be used by demons to put up an excellent front that will be so credible that so many people ended up marrying the counterfeit believing they were the one. Now, for most people, especially nowadays, they don't always end up actually marrying them. They just end up involved in a relationship with them, have a couple of children and things like that. So I see this happen so often. Now, counterfeits will always come to distract you from something. The initial presence of the counterfeit will be a threshold, for lack of fruitfulness in your life, and there will be regression in areas that were once thriving. Counterfeits will strengthen generational curses with you instead of breaking them. Remember, I've talked about all of this. They will assist you in reenacting all the predominant sins that run in your family. Counterfeits will never commit to you, and if they marry you, it is a pseudo commitment, right, where they are married, but in their actions remain treacherous philanderers. So counterfeits come to cause delay in our lives, especially marital delay. I was just talking recently about that too, about marital delay. So the things of Yah follow a systematic course. To get something from Yah, you must first make room for it. Consequently, the devil knows if a counterfeit is purposelessly filling the vacancy of your Yah-ordained spouse. So the real Yah-sent spouse will never come, okay, because there's a counterfeit in place. Or they will, but it's going to be extremely delayed, okay? I have seen some men and women being used by demons and stringing people along, sometimes for 5+ years, knowing very well that they did not love them and neither were they ever going to marry them. So they waste time, right? They just waste a ton of time. If the people would try to leave the relationship, they would even try to convince them to stay. However, sometimes Yah will cause demons to receive confusion. If a person who has been putting a front drops the ball and brazenly tell you they don't care about you either in speech or in action, you better thank Yah for his mercy and move on with your life. We have heard the saying that rejection is sometimes Yah's protection, too many times, that it now sounds platitude, but I have seen enough to fully understand how unerring it is. I have seen people being deceived by insidious men and women all the way into marriage. Then the Jezebel spirit only reared its head only after the first child, or when all of them had been born. Remember, rejection is indeed Yahuwah's protection, okay? It's a good thing that certain people don't always accept you, and it's a good thing that you don't always fit in with certain people. Sometimes we desire certain people because we don't know what Yah knows about them, okay? Now I'm going to skip down to a certain section here. Also, another thing that this person mentions is if you have dreams with people in it and you can't see their faces, please cancel those dreams, okay? If you cannot see clearly who it is, cancel them. Why? Because, okay, most of the time when you have dreams where you can't see people clearly, these are demons, okay? And sometimes demons can use somebody. Let's see here. Sometimes they can use somebody that you know to fool you. Okay, so the counterfeit deep down has the anatomy of a wolf, but maintains the semblance of an upright man so well that you will actually be utterly sold. The fraudulent imitation is almost flawless if you are spiritually blind. So this is another reason why it's so important. Those of you who are still single, or even those of you that have come out of relationships and now you're single again and you're waiting, this is why it's so vital that you focus and work on your relationship with Yah so that you're not spiritually blind. Because the more connected and close you are with Yah and His Word, you're not going to be spiritually blind. You're going to be able to have, sorry, it's coming to me here. I can't remember the term right now. We all have a gift of discernment, okay? So the more that you focus on your relationship with Yah and you're closer with Him, the more you're going to be able to discern, okay? Now, recently I was talking about narcissism and things like that, okay? A lot of this is in here as well. So the narcissist will always end up doing the unforeseen, because if you give someone an inch, they will take a mile. Now, the Jezebel spirit will test your boundaries, and if you do not quell its unruly madness, it will one day unleash its wickedness on you full force. Exactly what usually pans out in the end, okay? The counterfeit always comes to try and strip you of your anointing, all right? So, are they an Ishmael or an Isaac, right? So, counterfeit, real thing, all right? So, here are signs that you are dealing with an imposter, okay? Now, there will always be red flags, but a lot of us will not be able to see them because, well, most of the time, we're not in right standing with Yah. Once again, going back to what I just said, this is why it's so important that we focus and work on our relationship with Yah, first and foremost, okay? Now, the spirit of a man enables him to have intuition, communion with Yah, and a conscience, okay? When your spirit is not connected to Yah, your intuition will be seared, because you must have a relationship with the Father to know Yah's voice and have the right spirit leading your life to discern that it is Yah that is warning you. A lot of people always remember after the final demise of a toxic relationship that Yah did warn them, but they did not have an intimate relationship with Him, which would enable them to know the channels that Yah can use to speak to us, and neither did they have godly wisdom to interpret the dreams. A lot of people are hoaxed by the counterfeit because they do not know who they are or what they are even looking for. The antidote to circumventing counterfeits is writing a list of what you are looking for. Now, that part I don't agree with. I am an advocate of writing a list of what you're looking for so that when any person comes into your life, you measure them up to that list with time. The counterfeits will talk the talk, but will lack the character and substance to back up their pretense in the long run, okay? So the prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty, Proverbs 27:13. Now, the first sign is a wicked heart. You will always know a counterfeit by the condition of their heart. The Bible says in Jeremiah 17:9, the heart of man is desperately wicked. There is nowhere in that verse where demons are also mentioned. It talks about the inherent nature of man's heart. Man on his own doing can be very evil, especially if he does not submit his heart to Yah or prioritizes his will and desires above all. Nobody gets a spirit that they already do not have the capacity to carry. For example, you cannot get a spirit of lust if you already do not have it in your heart. Demons only increase the propensity of man's evil, but it all starts with the condition of man's heart. Wow. So counterfeits are always very selfish and way too self-seeking. They will be entitled that you feed their egos, needs, and demands while expecting you to deny and neglect yourself and only find satisfaction in the breadcrumbs they effortlessly drop at you. Once you understand the power of choice that we all have as individuals, you will stop making excuses for people. Some people might not understand how much they are being used by the devil and think their actions will not have consequences, but people treat you a certain way because they choose to. When people are possessed, their eyes are spiritually blind, but their human perception still works. There is no love in abuse, and if a man is abusing you, or a woman, it's not spiritual warfare, okay? So the counterfeit is always desperately wicked. Please do not get into a relationship or marriage with anyone who is delusional and in denial about the condition of their heart and has not yet decided to submit it to Yah's will, okay? After experiencing the narcissist, you gain a fresh, unplumbed understanding. Looks, accolades, eloquence, you name it, absolutely nothing can make up for an ugly heart, and you will never forget the lesson again. The next one is wrong season. I've talked about this too. I did an episode called The Times, I believe it's called The Times and Seasons of Yahuwah. Okay, so Yah is an Elohim of order. He works with times and seasons. But the devil is the master of doing things haphazardly. He just throws things in the mix chaotically. Before Yah does anything great in our lives, like bringing our spouse, there will always be a sign. Okay, so again, I've talked about all of this. Those who are led by the Spirit can discern and will not miss Yah's signs. Slightly before your spouse comes into your life, or shortly before they do, you can meet a destiny helper in the form of maybe a mentor, an older person, or something like that in Yah, who will teach you essentials about biblical womanhood or manhood and what it means to be a godly wife and a godly husband. The Ruach, or the Holy Spirit, will give you impressions to adjust certain things in your life. You will be pruned and aligned. Okay, I've talked about this too. Please use your waiting season to allow Yah to work in you, okay? Now, when you are dealing with a counterfeit, they will come out of season, out of the woodworks, and absolutely at random, okay? The counterfeit will always show up in the wrong season when you have no business whatsoever being in a relationship. Now, some will even say, and I have to agree with this, that most of the time counterfeits come before the real thing, okay? All right, so next is confusion and lack of peace. Now, Yah blesses and adds no sorrow with the blessing. But when the devil gives you a quote-unquote supposed blessing, you can lose your sanity trying to maintain it. This is a huge one, y'all. This is a huge one. I can't tell you how many people have told me that they had no peace in these relationships. And I'm like, that should have been like one of the first red flags, okay? Because we know that Yahuwah is not the author of confusion, 1 Corinthians 14:33. But when Satan is the author of a relationship, confusion is bountiful in that union, along with so many other things. Now, things will feel too good to be true. You may believe that person is the one, but at the same time, there will be discrepancy, and so many things will just not add up, even though you might not be able to denote exactly what it is. The counterfeit will break down a lot of scripture as well, okay? And some maybe don't, and that should be another sign. But you will have prophecies that he or she is your spouse. But if you believe someone is your spouse, but everything about them does not line up with the word of Yah and Yah's nature, you are dealing with a counterfeit. Okay? The day I permanently decided to sever a situationship with a counterfeit for good was the day I regained my peace. The connection had been devoid of peace from the beginning. Okay? All right. So, red flags not to ignore. Now, have you ever had an experience where you've looked at somebody you were once attracted to, or maybe you were once involved with, and you see them completely different, right? And you're just like, what was I thinking? That's because your lenses were obscured by desperation, dysfunction, and not sobriety, okay? You probably weren't praying either and leaving it to Yah. Now you're able to see clearer because you're healing, okay? Which, again, I've talked about this too. There's a lot of us that need to do healing before stepping into marriage, and then there's some that you will heal in your marriage. But if you don't heal certain things before then, this can also cause you to fall into a counterfeit relationship, all right? All right, so things to look out for. Controlling and manipulative. I talked about this in a series, which I'm so sorry I never did finish, the Boundary series, but I talked a lot about narcissism, control, manipulation, gaslighting, you name it, okay? So controlling and manipulative, jealous and possessive, even when you have not given them any reason to be. Abuse. I also talked about all forms of abuse. And abuse, again, can be physical, mental, emotional, verbal, spiritual, okay? Or sexual as well. All right, so makes you feel inferior, calls you names, humiliates you in front of others, and not moved by your pain. Another one is lying, exaggerates, hides things, tells half-truths, pretends to be who they are not. Easily angered and anger outbursts. They lash out with hurtful words, throw things, trembles with anger, or could even beat you, okay? Over-dependency on family, consults family on every tiny issue. If they are a man, they will not make decisions without consulting their mothers or sisters or friends. Talks to them too much and will not support you if the family attacks you, okay? Irresponsible, unable to look after oneself, keep a job, manage relationships, money, or time. Disrespectful, they disrespect their parents, ignores your ideas and views, does things that affect you without consulting you. Lustful, always wants to touch you and have sex, stares lustfully and flirts with the opposite sex, still in contact with their ex and have inappropriate conversations with them, weirdly attracts sexual interests like flies. Those are demons, okay? Avoidance. They avoid discussing their past, introducing you to their family. They hide you, reluctant to talk about their family background. They are very secretive about crucial matters. Unteachable. Sensitive to criticism and do not receive correction, even if it is constructive and can help them grow. And unforgiving. They hold grudges and punish you for offending them. Okay. Now, the Jezebel spirit loves to destroy people's lives through humiliation because it results in toxic shame. And shame is very crippling. It's a powerful attack on our identity. Anyone who has ever been in a relationship with a narcissistic counterfeit eventually saw how the demon that had been assigned against their life would relentlessly try to humiliate them. A counterfeit will do something strikingly out of the ordinary against you, something you never anticipated from someone in your inner circle that will cause shame. But the devil is a liar, and weapons will be formed, but they will not prosper. In counterfeit relationships, you customarily have one person who idolizes and puts the other person on a pedestal because of generational low self-esteem issues, while the other person looks down on the other person. The cure to unrequited love is self-love, okay? Or unrequited, I'm sorry, I said that completely wrong. The cure to unrequited love is self-love. Cycles of unrequited love are telling of a deeper issue. It is a ramification of childhood trauma. When you have not dealt with your trauma issues, you will keep loving narcissists and people who do not have the emotional intelligence to reject you gracefully. Our interaction is spiritual. Narcissists are always insecure, meaning you will both have familiar spirits of low self-esteem that connected you together. When you address the repressed trauma, you will finally break the cord that keeps you entangled in cycles with narcissists. Okay? Wow. I'm telling y'all, I have seen a lot of people talk about this in different articles and stuff, and when I came across this one, I was like, okay, I'm sharing this because I've talked about this a lot too within my podcast, and it's just so vital that people hear this because so many people are going through this. All right, after the demise of a relation or a relationship with a counterfeit, you must sit down and ask yourself the right questions. What is it in me that attracted a person of this caliber to my life? Do I have the right perception of Yah to believe he would send me a person who treats me in this manner? Do I trust Yahuwah enough to believe he will give me his best, or do I try to control my life? Be frank and honest with yourself. Okay? Through counseling a couple of women, I have seen the adverse effects of marrying someone whose initial purpose was never actually marriage. Rejection can be felt too deeply in marriage, and the fruits of a relationship with a counterfeit are invariably a sordid betrayal, a heart-wrenching heartache, and post-trauma. There's a lot of destruction. A while ago, I talked to a woman who was going through serious marital mayhem in what was supposed to still be the honeymoon phase. Even their whole dating foundation substantiated that this man was a counterfeit. There were all forms of abuse, cheating, and humiliation in the area they lived and with the police. I expressed to her that unfortunately she had married a counterfeit. She probably could have throttled me if I was within reach, so in denial. It is crazy that sometimes we are willing to make Yah seem like a wicked Elohim just so that we can uphold the idols in our hearts. Okay? So, that is the article that I wanted to share with you all, and then I'm just going to share my thoughts on this. Okay? So again, this is something that I have spoken on so much within my podcast ministry. I truly have. You know, it's a big deal, brothers and sisters. It's a huge deal. We have to be careful. You know, and there are many of us, myself included, that unfortunately at some point in our lives we got involved with a counterfeit. Okay? That's why there's so many divorces. That's why there's so many broken homes. That's why there's children that are being brought up in the situations that they are because they were brought in through these counterfeit relationships. You know, and I've always said this too, even before sharing this article, I've said this too, that the enemy, this is one of his biggest tactics, to not only just steer people away from the plans that Yah has for them, especially in the area of marriage, but to continue to destroy them and to destroy generations to come after that, okay? That's why in the article, and I've even said this before, there are Ishmaels and there are Isaacs. You know what I mean? You know, there are those that truly were part of Yah's will, and then those that were not. You know what I mean? Now, again, I've always said this, all children are a blessing. But you get what I'm saying? It's like generation after generation of these generational curses, these familiar spirits, and unfortunately, brothers and sisters, I have seen this way too much with family members, with friends of mine, myself, and just with so many people. And then what's sad is that society takes these things and they magnify them like as if it's normal. And we see this in movies, we see this in TVs, we see that, broken families are now the norms, divorce is now the norm, and you know what I mean? I have talked about this so much in my podcast, how society has just made these types of things normal and that's how it should be, and it's not, brothers and sisters. I've had so many people come to me and say, I'm divorced and now I'm waiting if Yah has somebody for me, or I just finally got out of a toxic relationship. I was never married, praise Yah, but now I'm waiting, and this, that, and the next thing. It happened to me too. I've heard this from so many people. So many people, unfortunately, have fallen into the trap of a counterfeit. So many people have, unfortunately. So, in closing, what I want to say is, if you haven't yet, please go back. You'll see it in the titles and descriptions of each episode. Please go back and listen to the episodes these episodes where I have discussed the topic of counterfeits, okay? Along with this one, because really, brothers and sisters, and I implore you and I encourage you to please be in a lot of prayer. Get right with Yah first. Focus on that primarily, okay? That is the most important thing that you need to do, so that you're close with Him, you have an understanding of what He has for you, you are submitted and surrendered to Him, or surrendered and submitted, however you want to put it. You're able to utilize discernment. You have a better idea of His Word and an understanding of who He is and His Word. Because when we don't have that knowledge, we're easily led astray, right? We're blinded. And so it's even easier for the enemy to cause us to fall into this trap of counterfeit situations and relationships. Okay? Do not let it happen to you, or do not let it happen to you again. Praise Yahuwah for His mercy and grace through Yeshua. I'm so thankful for that, because if we didn't have that, we would all be, not in a good place right now. Or as they say in society, SOL, like we would have no other chance, and that's how it would honestly be. But I have heard this a lot, where usually the counterfeits will come when you're very close to coming into the real thing. And sometimes Yah will allow it to happen to test you, to see, are you really willing to wait on what He has for you? Do you really believe in Him? Do you really trust in Him? Or the minute something comes along, you're going to go ahead and go for it because you're tired of waiting, or you're lonely, or you're desperate, or you know what I mean? So sometimes it's a test, but most of the time it's an attack. It is an attack, but sometimes Yah will allow it to see where your heart actually is. And do you actually trust in Him? Do you believe what He's told you? Do you believe what He's shown you? And I hate to say this, but many of us have failed that test. Quite a bit. Now, does that mean you don't get another chance? No, you get another chance, like I said. Praise Yah for His mercy and His grace. But it will result in more delay, because now Yah sees your heart is still not where it needs to be, and that there's still work that needs to be done. Remember, you don't want to step into anything, whether it's a marriage, ministry, whatever that it is. You don't want to step into anything that you're not ready for, that you're not prepared for. Allow Yah to work on you first. Allow Him to heal whatever areas that need to be healed. Allow Him to work on you. And give Him the time to work on your spouse as well. So that when He brings the two of you together, okay, like I've said so many times before, everything will work out. Now, that's not to say you guys still won't go through trials and stuff, but those are normal things to go through. But when we enter into these counterfeit relationships and situationships, it literally can destroy our lives. And I have seen this firsthand. Can we bounce back from it? Absolutely. Yah can redeem us. And again, give us that second chance. He gives us mercy. But for a lot of us, unfortunately, we end up going through a lot before we're delivered and redeemed. Unfortunately, we end up going through the trauma and the toxicity and the damage or the abuse or whatever it is, because that's what the enemy wants to do. He wants to try to take us out. He wants to kill, steal, and destroy. But can we still bounce back from it, even if we did, to some degree, experience these things? Absolutely, because nothing's impossible with Yah, and He does heal. Scripture says that He's close to the brokenhearted and to those with a contrite spirit. So yes, we can absolutely bounce back from these things. It's sad to me when I hear so many people say, I never want to marry again, I never want to be with somebody again, I never want to be in love again, because they experience such heartbreak. But if only they would to realize that they brought it upon themselves, right? Because they allowed the enemy to bait and trap them, because they didn't have the proper discernment, because they weren't close to Yah, because at one point maybe they got tired and said, you know what, I'm taking control of my own life and I'm doing what I want to do. And then they ended up where they did. And then they become angry with the Father. But it's not His fault. It's our own faults. Because we get desperate, and this is why it's so important too that as we allow Yah to work on us, that we also remember that we need to have the fruits of the Spirit, right? There's 9 fruits of the Spirit. I've talked about this before, and one of them is self-control. Another one is patience, long-suffering. That's why it's so important that we have these things in our lives, and that we have discernment. That's not one of the fruits of the Spirit, but that we have discernment along with that, and that we're close to Him, that our main focus, our priority is our relationship with Him, and that we're reading the Scriptures, that we're familiar with them, so that we cannot be tricked, so that we cannot be, baited and trapped, right? Because what does Scripture tells us? That when we resist the devil, he will flee from us. The only way we can resist him is when we're in prayer, when we're reading Scriptures, when we're close to the Father, right? When we're doing our best to live righteously, right? That's how we can resist him. It's like what I read in the article, that oftentimes demons and the enemy have a chance to come to us because we've opened the door through sin, because our heart is wicked, right? It starts within our hearts. Remember, I've always said this, our own wills consist, right, of our mind, will, and emotions. Okay? Our emotions come from where, right? Usually the heart is the seat of our emotions. Okay? That's why the Bible says, do not trust your heart. This is why I always say, please do not listen to what society tells you, because what's one of the first things society tells you? Oh, follow your heart. Listen to your heart. No. Your heart will be very quick to mislead you. Because when we get in our feelings and our emotions and our flesh and our heart, guess what happens? Probably 95% of the time we're misled and we're hurt. We need to walk in spirit and truth, not in our flesh. And I know that can be hard, believe me. I have a hard time not being in my flesh a lot of times. We all do, because we all have a sin nature. But again, as I've said so many times before, this is why it's important that we seek Him, and that we do our best, and that we are reading the Scriptures, that we are not so much in the world, but we are in His Word. Okay? So, I'm going to end on that. Again, I encourage you to go back and listen to my other episodes that talk about the topic of counterfeit relationships and situations. Such a vital, vital topic, brothers and sisters, for everybody. And my prayer truly is, that no one would fall victim to any more counterfeit situations or relationships. It truly, truly is. It's been something I've been reflecting a lot on. As a matter of fact, my last couple of episodes I titled it Fatal Attraction. That also had a lot to do with counterfeits as well. So I really encourage you all to go back and listen to these episodes that have to do with this topic. It's something I've been reflecting a lot on lately. And I just really implore you all to, please just be careful, use discernment. Make sure you're close to the Father. Make sure you're close to Yah. Focus on that. Matthew 6:33, seek first the kingdom of Yah, and everything else shall be added unto you. When you seek Him, whatever His will is for you, whatever His plans are for you, will follow in His perfect timing. But you've got to seek Him first. You got to seek His word. You got to seek His ways. Matthew 6:33. All right, brothers and sisters, so that is it for this word. Again, it feels so great to come back on and just record a word and publish it for you all. I pray that this word is a blessing for you all. I pray that it helps you. I pray that it ministers. And again, I highly encourage you to go back and check out my other episodes concerning the topics of counterfeits. Okay? So, all right, that's it, brothers and sisters. Thank you so much for listening. And I will hopefully talk with you all in my next episode. Shalom.